Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine Crestani with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I am joined by the delightful Brheanna Myers. So she is a spiritual awakening coach, a holistic healing practitioner, and author whose work was deeply shaped by her near-death experience. She supports people navigating spiritual awakening, identity shifts, and emotional healing by focusing on grounded integration, nervous system regulation, and embodied awareness. Her work bridges spiritual insight with the human experience, helping people integrate profound change without bypassing their emotions or everyday life. So a big welcome to the show, Brheanna. So I guess straight away, the question that pops in my head is, what happened with your near-death experience that led to you doing the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, so my near-death experience was in December of 2020, so, the height of COVID. I ended up contracting fungal pneumonia, but because we were in the height of COVID, I went into the emergency room 3 times in a week. And the first time they tested me for COVID, I think 3 or 4 times in that one visit. And they gave me antibiotics and sent me home. And then 2 days later, I wasn't feeling any better. Cough was getting worse. Went back in. They gave me steroids, and then they sent me back home. And then I went back in like a day and a half later. I could barely breathe at that point. And they told me I hadn't given the medication long enough to kick in and just to go home and wait it out. And later that evening, I collapsed in my foyer, and my, now ex-husband ended up rushing me to the emergency room. I landed in the ice immediately. They were going to airlift me to a different facility, but of course it was COVID, so everything was packed. And then I had my near-death experience where I stepped out of my body. I remember looking at my body, and this is always so funny. People are like, what's it like? And I remember I'm like, it's like stepping out of your car. I had no attachment to that physical vessel over there, like none. And anyway, I'll tighten it up a little, but the main points is I was shown the vortex of the quantum field. I was shown how sacred geometry is embedded in our very essence, how light codes activate our DNA. I was shown the quantum web and how everything was connected. At first, they showed me my quantum web and how my lifetime of trauma that I had experienced, how everything was connected. There was no separation. It all had to happen. And at that moment, it was like I almost like just put that baggage down. Like all that time I'd been carrying this weight of this past, part of me. And then it was just like that moment. It was just like, that's not mine to carry. And, as I'm like there, another big part of it was that they told me that I had such a hard soul contract that I had arranged for me to have an exit clause at that point, and that I could leave at that point if I wanted to, or I'd come back and I'm getting on my spiritual path. Before it ended, they showed me the collective quantum field and how we are all connected. There is no separation. That's such an illusion. And so when I came back, I started having these really deep downloads and very profound understanding that our entire system, I looked at it, just completely broke away and apart in all the illusion of how they kept us separated, whether it be having us fighting amongst ourselves or the food we eat, the water, the sky, the chemtrail, all of it was all to create the illusion of separation. So that being said, I ended up diving very deep into quantum healing, which brought me into DNA activating, J-seal removal, light body activations, like removing astral devices out of the subtle fields, things like that, spiritual surgery. Yeah, that's kind of how it started. We were just kind of talking. Now I'm getting my doctorate. And
I feel to ask,
so that's
what happens with spiritual surgery? With the astral bodies?
Like, what part? Like,
I know what it's like.
Like, what's the experience like?
But I feel to just ask to share with people who might be listening and why you would do it. Like, why would people need spiritual surgery? Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's multiple reasons why someone gets spiritual surgery, whether they have a physical defect in the physical body or the physical field. What I work with specifically is doing light body activation, and that is removing things like the keepers of the human legacy, the Nephilim. We all have a Nephilim that resides on the back of our neck. And as we ascend and take on more light codes, those devices or those sentient beings make it very difficult. So as you are awakening, like say you're going through your spiritual journey and awakening, you might notice an increase in pain in the shoulders and neck. Well, that's because that Nephilim is still trying to keep you playing this game of separation. And so that weight is actually pushing you down while you are ascending. So we remove those. And then we all incarnate with a soul contract. Your keepers come with you via your soul contract. Same with your Nephilim. They're not here to hurt you or even to be of disservice. They actually come here to help us because we want to play the game of separation. When we come to Earth, we want to have that illusion of separation so that we can evolve and come back to self, you know? So I always send, like, every time I walk through this process, which basically I do a unified field meditation. That's the first part. Unify all of your subtle fields. And then we talk to the archangels, your guides, ancestors, whoever needs to come in is invited into the room or the space. And then we send them with unconditional love because they've done such a service for you. And then one of my favorite parts of this is actually an 8-session series that I do, but one of my favorites is removing your astral devices. So when you incarnate, you have karma, and often we have karma that comes from lifetime after lifetime, and we actually have devices that are implanted into our subtle fields to keep you playing that role of that karma. That's why you might end up realizing that you keep doing the same thing, meeting the same guy, meeting the same woman, ending up in the same situation. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's, having problems keeping a friend group or whatever it is often because you have this device that's looping you through this karmic cycle. And so we can actually remove those. Most people have about 6 to 12, just kind of depends on what you've come through. A lot of people that have come to me to do this, and I've done this a lot, are carrying Atlantean devices because a lot of karma was built in Maldek.
I got
which Maldek
my spirit
was a
guides
planet
removed them quite
do you have them?
painfully, but I
Or did
had
you get
them
yours
removed. Yeah.
Good. Yep. And so, yeah. And so, yeah, and what's funny is that, like, yeah, in my near-death experience, I had my DNA activated in that experience, but then I was taught or I was guided to learn how to do it from here. So now I'm able to do it. So I do 8 different DNA activations. And it's so funny how that, like, that experience, I had no idea about DNA activations in that time. And then, I don't even think it was 6 months later, I ended up meeting this woman who was doing DNA activations and taught me how to do it. So yeah, there's no separation.
Fate.
There's no coincidence.
No, it's not even
I always
fate.
tell people, like, it's just,
It's not even fate.
it's all connected. But yeah, so yeah, no, well, and I'm, to be honest, I don't know how much I believe in free will with how much I've seen of connection and astrology and your numerology and your moon phases and how all that connects. I've done it so deep on my own field that I'm like, I mean, how much free will do we really have? Because I believe that when we wrote our soul contract, that's when we had free will, and our higher self is driving and we're just here to observe. I think when I started to really embody that and realizing that I used to give myself so much anxiety because I'm like, oh, should I choose this? Should I do that? Should I give this? I was like, once I surrendered that idea that I was driving this car, everything started to flow. I'm like, I'm not in control the way that I wanted to perceive that I was. I'm here for an experience, and I'm here to transmute emotion and to have this experience, to taste foods, to smell flowers, to swim in the ocean. It's not about, making money and all that. Like we've created this idea that these are our baselines. It's like, no, we just came here to experience. That's why we're so drawn to beautiful things like the sunsets or the ocean or the mountains or these beautiful natural environments, because that's what we watch from
And
a cosmic
I feel it's
plane
really
and be like, I
interesting
wanna
what you
do
said
that.
about free will, because I can see people's highest timelines, right? But then it always comes down to a choice in that moment if they want to go through the hard path or go through the easy path. And I've had this myself where I've reached out to like a mentor or a friend and be like, hey, can you check in with me? What if I got this weird feeling about this? They're like, well, you can say yes to that, but you're going to get the same lesson just 10 times harder. Or you can trust your instincts and say no to that, and you're still going to get the lesson, but a different way. So I feel that that's where the free will comes into play. And then at the same time, like I'll see multiple timelines at once, and I know I could do multiple different things, but it's all going to get me to at the end goal anyway. It just depends which one feels more aligned at the time. And also you can say no to things too, right? Like this is the biggest thing I've learned too. Hey, spirit, I know you're telling me to do that right now, but that doesn't feel right. Like, I'm still human. You forgot that part. Like you forgot I have to do this first and then we can get to that. So it's interesting how that plays out. And if you're meant to meet somebody, you're going to meet them. If that's your contract that you're meant to, it depends when you're going to meet them and how you're going to meet them too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing is I agree with you on all those things, timelines, and, I see higher timelines and I remove you. So I totally agree with you on that. But what if, and physics actually proves this, that your brain is not generating thoughts at all. You are an antenna that's picking them up off of the quantum fields. So if you are attuning your mind to the frequency of what you perceive is what you want your timeline to be, you're not making a choice. You are tuning into the timeline in the quantum realms. And that is what trajectory puts you on those higher timelines. Because we think that our brain is generating the thoughts, but the truth is we have a receiver crystal monologue. You're more often channeling than you realize, because that receiver crystal that we carry from our etheric realms are actually translating into our voice channels, right? Now, some people hear different like accents or like light language, things like that. But when you're not fully attuned to transmuting that and it's still like weird for you, they'll do it in your own voice. So that's why I always tell people, like, have you ever been sitting there and had that thought like, why did I think that? That was weird, right? Because you didn't think that. Who thought to think that, right? Right? So there's two entities already in your mind that we're perceiving. So you're actually picking up on the quantum field, and I can actually prove this with science. So have you ever been thinking about, oh, I need to go buy that, and then all of a sudden your phone has it on it, and you're like, that was so weird, I just thought about that. Well, because your phone is picking up off the same quantum field that your mind is attuning to. Why, yes, that we do have the idea of the thought is ours. The mind is just a tool. So are we actually making the decision, or are we attuning to the frequency in the field, right? So that's why I say, I'm not sure I believe in free will in the way that it's taught anyway.
So intriguing.
You do have the ability to train how you tune in, definitely. That's why meditation and breath work is so important. You know what I mean? So I'm like, meditate and breathe, guys. That's where I
went through my psychic surgery, in a breathwork session, because I had to get pulled back. I was just going to say, for anyone tuning in and going, wow, they look different now, because Riverside doesn't like us talking about the quantum field, and this happens a lot. So when you run a metaphysical podcast, this often happens where we have so many technical difficulties, and it's just because it's almost like, I don't know, frequency interference. That's what I'd like to call it.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, it's I love that you brought up meditation and breath work, because that is where I went through all my psychic device removal when I was in a breath work session. And my guides were like, hey, you've got all these psychic devices. We actually need to remove them. And it was incredibly painful. I had to go back and reclaim all my past life, parallel lives, soul fragment deaths, had to pull them back in, I had them embedded in my legs, in my in so many different places. But the chain of events that happened after that. And then I said, where have these all come from? And exactly like you said, when you were in Atlantis. And I went, okay, all right, there's more.
Yeah.
And when you were talking then, they told me I need to do another sweep, because every time you step up a frequency level, new ones get activated and new ones come in. So I feel that's why I was led to ask you about it in the first place. And I feel that's why they cut us off, because it's like, she can't know this. It's like, too late. I do now.
I already know. Yeah, because I have a chart that's got about 50 different devices that people have within them. And like I said, most people in a session have 6 to 12. But yeah, I mean, I have a whole section of elementals. So if you have dragon device, fairy wing pins, there's like girdles. So if you in a past life maybe had like some kind of sexual crime, something like that, tends to be a chastity belt, which can interfere with like your sexual relationships in this lifetime. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to find these devices and have them removed if you feel guided to it and if it's in alignment. I always tell people, I'm like, really follow your intuition. And when I do these sessions, I always tell people, I'm like, because what I do is, so what you're talking about is a little bit different than the sessions I do. But when I start, I have to actually cloak your energy, because basically I just open you up to a whole different frequency, and you become very susceptible to dark energies, because it's like turning on a flashlight in the middle of the dark woods, right? They can all see you. So I actually have to cloak you. And then when we do the 8 sessions, I have a very limited amount of time that I can keep you cloaked. So we got to finish it so we can get to the last session, which is reintegrating your light field. And then it gives you a lot more protection. Basically, you know, when you like remove something dark from someone, it creates a void. And when there's a void, they're opportune, especially dark energies. They're like, ooh, an opening, and they want to hop in. So we want to make sure we get through it as quickly as possible. So I always tell people, I'm like, you can't start this and not finish. We have to finish, because we got to get to that last integration session. So I always tell people, like, really, really feel if it's aligned for you. If you want to do that session, it is, it's amazing. I mean, when I had mine done, it was like, my Kundalini activation, I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, which of course, shook my whole world, because I wasn't really expecting what came with that, and so I would tell people, like, it was like all of a sudden I was sitting at my office, I was working at the time I owned a farm. And so I was doing book work, and all of a sudden I heard this like pop, like a glow stick crack. And this energy just shot through my body. I mean, it was like I was like, what is happening? I was like, what is that? No, not Superman. The X-Men. Like, I thought electricity was going to shoot out of my hands. It was that like profound. I'm like seeing her shaking. And then all of a sudden I was just hearing all of these voices all at once. And I'm like, oh, I finally snapped. I'm like officially crazy, right? But turns out I found a shaman who helped me integrate it. And so I didn't end up in a 52-50 or a lockdown like a lot of people do. I hear so many people's stories with Kundalini awakenings that they end up in like a mental ward because they think they like went crazy. And it's unfortunate that we're so quick to label everything a mental illness when it could have a very deep, esoteric or spiritual system. I tell people all the time, I'm like, back in ancient civilizations, if you heard voices, and of course, if you hear voices, talk to your doctors. I'm not telling you not to follow through, stay on your medication, but we used to start training them as shamans, and now we tell them they're schizophrenic, and we don't look anywhere else or into any other path for them, and we just, we mitigate it, and you have these problems. And I actually have a friend, I won't tell the whole story for her privacy, but she had a lot of dark energy from her past. She had a drug addiction and things like that. She was told she was schizophrenic. And so I found it fascinating. So I just started asking her questions. I was in this journey and I was working with my guides and stuff. And I'm like, well, what do they sound like? What do they tell you? I'm like, is it the same voice? Is it a different voice? I just like interviewed her basically. And turns out I started working with her and I started helping her with vibration and working with healing her vibration and ascending. And the voices started becoming angelic. But what happens is that when you're in a low vibrational state, it's easy to channel those dark energies because you are in the closer to that vibrational plane. And so I'm like, wouldn't it be amazing if we started maybe looking at these mental illnesses and being like, well, let's raise their vibration, which we should do anyway. A big part of mental illness can be helped if we put people in a positive state of mind, right? But with her, I started working with raising her vibration, and then she started channeling angelic realms. So she was just a very powerful channel. But because she was in that low vibrational state, she was channeling dark energies. And so it was telling her to do dark things, and, she was being paranoid and all these things. Well, when you're hearing, dark energies telling you awful things, yeah, it's easy to become paranoid. But yeah, so again, disclaimer, if you have any of these things, stay on your medication, but there are alternative ideas to look into, you know?
Yeah, and that's really pertinent timing because I had a friend messaging me about someone that he was in a relationship with, and he goes, "Oh, she has borderline personality disorder." And I said, "Oh no, she just can hear all this her spirit guides." And he goes, "What?" And I'm not discounting that diagnosis. I said, "No, no." I said, "There's something else going on." And he's like, well, that's not, I don't know that. I said, no, it'll come out. Like it was just, and even like this movement between ADHD. And then I read this thing
Yeah.
and I sent it to someone. It's like ADHD just means you can see multiple things happening at once, but you haven't learned how to focus yet. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what a different perspective rather than we have to give you a drug to regulate that and think that there's something not right about that. So it's really interesting and, like you said, quick to label rather than understand what's going on that deeper level and asking those questions. And I feel we're stepping into a state collectively where it's like, well, actually, maybe hearing the voices is because I'm channeling or something like that. Let's get some reach out to someone else that might understand that rather than giving me some
Yeah.
medication to numb that.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because what you said about ADHD, my daughter was diagnosed ADHD, and I channeled with my guides on that too. And what I what I got was that it's actually just well, in part you're right too, but that it's a primal survival instinct because when we weren't living these cushy protected lives, you had to be aware of all things around you at all times to survive. And so actually it's just a ancient
Hyper awareness.
yeah, survival instinct. And when we learn, and when you're in this kind of environment where we don't have to I mean, obviously we still have to be aware, but we don't have to be worried about, being eaten by like a saber-tooth tiger, you know what I mean? Just, that energy has nowhere to go. So it's like that, you're just sitting here, like, especially when we put kids at a desk for 8 hours a day, and it's like they need to be out playing, and it's spirit all in itself too, so yeah, there's just a lot of things that I think we're so quick to label as a mental disorder. um I'm not saying they don't exist, but yeah, I mean, there's alternative things I would urge people to look into before just thinking something. And a lot of the people I work with that do have these diagnoses, like my ex-husband was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and with that, it's emotional dysregulation, which is a frequency interference. It's like when you start stacking these subtle fields, and actually, he's one of my best clients now, and we get along great because we understand now what that was, where it used to be, I triggered him the most, but when I was going through my ascension, my light was just triggering that darkness that was trying to interfere with his energy systems, so there's a lot of things once you start to like look at it, maybe there's something bigger than what we're being told. And I know that there's something bigger. I think everybody's starting to come on board now, but I've been telling people, I'm like, there's a lot more at play than what we're being given. And, I tell them, like, welcome to the big show,
Yeah.
So,
And it's about asking better questions too, rather
yeah,
than just blindly accepting what's in front of you. And I know we talked about this briefly before the show, but it's like when you push back on people and you go, no, this is what I want, this is what I'm feeling, this is when you meet the most resistance. But at the same time, that's why your soul came here, right? It's like, no,
right.
I'm gonna be heard and I'm gonna be seen and I'm gonna get my message across. Like, this
Yeah.
is my truth and I'm standing in that. And the amount of people I've met who have had to come head to head with their doctors, with their specialists, with everything like that, because their intuition's saying, no, you're wrong. I hear it screaming, you're wrong, whether it's a parent, even parents with their children. No, 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 no. And they're like, oh no, this is what it is. But in the end, it's you have to really back yourself and trust yourself. And later on down the track, if you're lucky, I say if you're lucky, you'll get confirmation. And sometimes it won't be for years, and you'll go, oh, I was right, or my intuition did
Yeah.
lead me down the right path. But you just have to trust it in the moment. And if your heart's screaming no and everyone's saying yes, say no. Just trust what comes through.
Yeah. So it's really funny about you saying that. A fun, interesting part of my story is that when I was a little girl, I had this imaginary friend. Her name was Apple Pie, right? And uh,
She's so
like
cute.
she to I know she to me was as real as you as anyone, right? And my family would like, oh, we're gonna strap her to the top of the car, just mean. I had older brother, he was mean, things like that. But I took it like just as personal as like she was my like sister sitting next to me. Well, at 10, I had this very big trauma that happened. And in that moment, Apple Pie was gone. I don't remember exactly when she left, but I remember that was the time where I became separated from her. And so, about a year after my near death experience, and I was really getting good at channeling with my guides, I had three that were consistently with me, and that was Nima, Paul, and Argo. But I could always sense this fourth energy kind of in the background, but it like wouldn't come forward. And about a year into that, finally she came forward, and it was Apple Pie. She had been my guardian angel. She had been there all along. And she had told me at that point, she's like, I didn't come forward until now because I needed you to believe that you were capable of channeling these energies and that this wasn't some childhood delusion. And so even our guides, they are very aware of our own ego brain being like, oh no, and we mitigate these things because that's what we've been programmed to do. And I always tell people, like, hypothetically, just imagine, what if everything that you ever thought was false turns out to be real, and everything you were told is real is actually false? And if you just sit in that for like a half an hour, just think about it. I mean, what if fairies are real? What if, and I know these things to be true, but for the person that's investigating and kind of stepping into this world, um, you know, why did they go so hard after witches, right? Because they knew something. They knew the power of the feminine. They knew the power of
Nature.
belief in the manifest and nature and of the mind. And they weren't going after witches because they were casting spells. I mean, if you look back in the histories, yeah, they were herbalists, they were healers, Um, so I'm like, even the pentagram, if you go into the dark history or the deep histories of the pentagram, it's a protection symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put a symbol of fear and demonic attachment to it, everyone's afraid of it. But the truth is, it's the north, south, east, west, and the ether, and you are the ether, right? It protects you. And now everybody thinks it's witchcraft, which is just wild to me. I mean, even, and this is always a hot topic, but even the swastika was found in all the ancient cultures, right? That's in Egypt, it's in the Aztecs, it's all over. And it's a symbol of freedom, esoteric freedom. It's what ancient civilizations used it for. But now it's cultivated to hatred, rightfully so, with what had happened. But we don't use that symbol anymore. And it was a very powerful protection symbol. So I'm just, I'm like, there's just things around us that maybe just think about why they would keep us away from certain things and why we would attach a symbolic, dark energy to something that was actually protecting us. Same with like Lilith. She got such a bad rap, right? Lilith. And the truth is, she wouldn't stand by and give her power away. But now we look at her as a dark feminine energy, and now she's starting to get her power back. I think a lot of people are starting to realize, like, now people are seeing the truth of her and what she really was, but they stripped her of her power and made her, the villain. And well, I think we're starting to realize that no, she just wasn't going to go along with the narrative. So there's a lot of great things that are kind of coming to the surface and to the light now that I find beautiful. But I always tell people, like, question everything. The narrative that you've been given in a lot of ways have been to keep you playing small, keeping you in scarcity, keeping you in limitation, so that you don't step into how powerful you are. I actually just did a show on NDE, and it was the first time I told my whole story of my near-death experience from start to finish in all details. And I sent him a picture and like a before and after, and like just doing energy healing, just doing activations, just doing holistic, and I know medications, and I don't drink soda. I eat very clean, I look like two different people, like completely different people. If I gave you both those pictures, you wouldn't believe they were the same person. And it's literally, I didn't work out every day. I didn't, it's like there's so much attached to us because of these belief systems that have been programmed into us. So one of the things I work a lot with is subconscious reprogramming. And it's a really, really, and so for your listeners, if you want to just start small, if you're just trying to figure out how to start, like listening to affirmations while you sleep. What an easy way to, you're already sleeping, right? Utilize those 8 hours because your consciousness takes a walk and goes and astral projects, but your subconscious never stops. And your subconscious is always running in the background and it's fueling the thought. And so what we were talking about that got us cut off, so we'll see if we stay, but your brain is the antenna, right? You're fueling where you're pulling and what your frequency is pulling out of the quantum field. It's just like a radio station. There's two parts to this. You tune in to a frequency, and you listen to that station, but it doesn't mean that all the other stations don't exist. You just tuned into that frequency, and that is done by subconscious programming. But even more so, if you want to take that one more step, is that the radio isn't creating the music, it's broadcasting the music, right? And you're tuning into it. That's what quantum field is. It's not creating the timelines, it's broadcasting the possibility of a timeline that's already created. You get what I'm saying? So I always tell people, like, question everything, question it all, because there is so much more truth when you start diving down into the deeper layers of what they told you isn't real.
Yeah. And curiosity didn't kill the cat.
That's true.
Right? And
Schrodinger's cat, right?
it's both dead and alive. But this is the thing. It's just, really starting to come back to you and start to go, hang on, that doesn't feel right, or that doesn't seem right, and then keep running with that rather than, I'm being ridiculous. And the more you come back to yourself and start to listen to that, and follow your curiosity. And I always tell my clients, what are you curious about? Go follow that. Because the more you follow it, the more you end up in front of different practitioners or different teachers or different mentors because you were curious about it. So many of the best relationships I have with people or opportunities are because I was curious, and they're like, how did you find out about that? Like, I asked the question. Like it just happened.
Yeah. And they were like, Exactly. Did you ever see that movie? It didn't. I don't think it was a very successful movie, but it had Jim Carrey in it. It was called The Yes Man. I actually recommend it to my clients often. But the movie premise was he was kind of in a limited life, and he wasn't making any changes. And he went to a seminar where they were like, I challenge you, you're going to make a covenant to say yes to every opportunity that ever comes along. And all of these amazing things start happening for him. Of course, he had some bad things that happened, but they all led to something really positive. And so I tell people, like, that's a great way to start too. Just be curious, say yes. Maybe it's not something you think you might enjoy, but then it turns out to lead you down this path of the greatest decision you ever made. So be curious and try new things, and don't allow limitations, because a lot of the limitations that we carry are not even ours. I do a lot of work with reprogramming, and I'll ask people, like, well, why do you believe that? And it's so interesting how often you get people that don't know when you ask, because they never get a kickback of, well, why do you think that? And instead, it's always either somebody opposing their belief or agreeing with them, and then they have a conversation. But like when you go, well, why? Then they're like, well, and then you just keep asking until you get down to that core belief. Where'd that come from? Like, why do you think you believe that, right? And not because you're taking away from their belief, but more than likely it's not even your belief. It comes from community, family, sibling, a friend, an experience, whatever it is, and it's not even really yours. But yet you've been carrying it for so long that it just became something you carry, and so that's how you kind of go reverse engineer all that stuff, and then you start to find what really lights you up and what your purpose is. So I think that's great that you're get curious.
Get curious. And as we start to finish our time together, Brheanna, we made it. I asked the guests that come on the show, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that I would really like to be able to, if I could touch everyone in the world, be like, what is your core belief? Because a lot of people don't realize that they have one belief that is limiting them very deeply, and all other beliefs stem off of that. So I would say to heal the world, find what your core belief is. And, if you really want to heal, I tell people all the time, like, get off the news, get off all the stuff that the big
Noise.
show is, like I said before. Yeah, I mean, it's the world stage, right? That there, it's a play, right? Characters, the whole thing. But when you get off of that and you start to, if you want to make changes, make them in your immediate environment. Make small changes around you, and those small changes are going to change the world. What was that movie, Biodome? Don't think globally, think locally. It's like there's a lot of truth to that. Stay where you are in your space. Be kind to people, be kind to one another. We don't know their story, their experience, or what they're going through, and I think we just need a little bit more kindness and understanding in the world right now.
Yeah. Amen. And if people want to come and find you and work with you, Brheanna, what's the best way they can connect with you?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, lightandbreezycoaching.com. You can also get my book on frequency. We didn't really get too far into that, but you can find that on Amazon. It's called Light and Breezy, Healing Frequencies Made Easy. So another great way to start if you're just kind of getting into the healing world and want to, bite-sized pieces. And I basically break down not every, but a lot of ailments, like symptom, to what frequency you can use to heal it, and then the affirmation and what emotion that it's attached to, and why it's causing a problem in the physical, so that you can reverse engineer the physical pains that are happening in your body or in your emotional fields.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure to put all those details in the show notes so people can find your book, they can find you, they can find everything in your world. So thank you so much for the thought-provoking conversation, Brheanna, because I love when you just expand your levels.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you for putting up with all the tech issues. We made it.
No, I love it. I feel like that's always a really solid nod, to be honest, that we're working with the high frequency of the angelic realms, the 5D. I think that's great. 7D. That I was just corrected. They're just 7D.
Amen.
So, yeah.
Definitely. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.